to southern shootings. Sri Lanka abstains in Ukraine resolution vote. IRD introduces privilege card scheme for taxpayers. Court bins LANKA'S writ applications. And in news overseas, Trump talks big in record-breaking State of the Union address.
The top story on Gold FM.
In your top story, Criminal Investigation Department officers arrested the former head of State Intelligence Service, retired Major General Suresh Saleh, this morning. Police spokesperson, Assistant Superintendent of Police F.U. Wutla, confirmed that the arrest relates to ongoing investigations into the 2019 Easter Sunday terror attacks. Saleh served as an embassy official in Malaysia during the bombings, before his later appointment as intelligence chief. The arrest follows long-standing allegations, including unverified claims made in a controversial British Channel 4 documentary, suggesting direct links between Saleh and the coordinated blasts.
This is the local news on Gold FM.
The Court of Appeal dismissed 2 writ applications filed by LANKA'S without a hearing today. The petitioners sought to invalidate an order issued by the Secretary to the Ministry of Defence, demanding the removal of 3 weapons armories maintained by the company. Police arrested the alleged pistol-wielding gunman responsible for the double murder of a lawyer and his wife in Akuregoda during a raid in Monaragala. Investigations suggest that the suspect acted as the primary gunman in multiple recent southern province killings, including the murder of a business manager in Ambalangoda and the fatal shooting in Jindupitia on the 14th of February. The second gunman, identified through AI-generated imagery released to the public, reportedly confessed to firing the pistol that killed the lawyer's wife, while her husband faced a T-56 assault rifle. 2 additional suspects linked to organised crimes in the western and southern provinces were apprehended alongside the gunman while hiding at a poultry farm under the guise of labourers. The West and South Crime Division is currently interrogating the group under a 90-day detention order to uncover further links to contract killings. Meanwhile, Public Security Minister Anand Vijaypala announced plans to table a new bill in Parliament aimed at controlling organised crime during a foundation stone-laying ceremony at the Mirigama police station today. The Inland Revenue Department recently launched a privilege card scheme to honour high-contributing and compliant individual taxpayers. The initiative features 2 tiers: a gold card for those who paid 5 million rupees or more in income tax during the last assessment year, and a silver card for payments between 3 and 5 million rupees. Cardholders will enjoy priority access to senior IRD management, dedicated tax service officers, and on-site consultancy services. For more information, including how to apply for the scheme, visit www.hirunews.lk/en. The ambassador of the Netherlands to Sri Lanka, Wiebe de Boer, met with the Deputy Finance Minister Anil Jayantha Fernando at the Ministry of Finance yesterday to discuss strengthening bilateral economic ties. The discussions focused on expanding Dutch investment in Sri Lankan infrastructure, specifically targeting the rehabilitation of rural roads, bridges and culverts to enhance agricultural supply chains. The Ministry of Finance stated that both parties agreed to explore new avenues for technical cooperation in the water management and dairy sectors. Ambassador de Boer reiterated his government's commitment to supporting Sri Lanka's current economic recovery through sustainable development projects that directly benefit rural communities. The central bank's inflation target of 5% does not bode well for a country like Sri Lanka. This is the view expressed by the CEO of the think tank Advocata, Dhananath Fernando, in the wake of national inflation figures being released for the month of January. Overall rate of inflation came in at 2.4%, which is 0.5% down from December, while non-food inflation for January came down to 3.4% from the previous month's 4.4%. But with the central bank expecting the overall inflation to hit the targeted 5% by the beginning of the third quarter of this year, consumers may feel the pinch in several months.
But we need to understand inflation, not a target. Actually, it has to be a ceiling. In my view, 5% inflation target is slightly towards the higher side because inflation is what you dilute the value of the money. So it has kept 5% is for a reason with the debt structure of Sri Lanka and so many other reasons. But in my view, ideally it has to be at about 2%. So with central bank probably missing the target because they are also responsible to keep the inflation at a certain range. But broader point here is that we have the macro framework to keep the inflation actually low and manageable. So in that sense, the central bank not hitting the target is good news rather than exceeding 5%. Because already after the 70% inflation round we had with the crisis, people are even finding it difficult to manage at this level of economic outlook. So what we need to do is, in my view, maybe consider to revise the targets and bring it down, because it seems if the central bank starts actually trying to hit 5% inflation target, it will add more pressure on people with high food prices and of course with diluting the value of the money that they earn. So in that sense, one thing sensible is to revise the target, but it requires some amendments to the central bank's independence act. But it's a worthwhile consideration if we need to revise the targets or follow according to the central bank independence act, what is the process afterwards. But definitely inflation has to be single digit in lower territory, because that is what is needed for a country to be stable and for the investment climate to be more predictable.
The Advocatus CEO is the latest to challenge the central bank's inflation target. Earlier, Dr. W.A. Vijayawardena, a former deputy governor of the central bank, also voiced concerns against 5% inflation.
If we go by the best practice in the rest of the world, the normal target which a country should set for itself is about 2% per annum. And also they can go higher by 1% or lower by 1%. So what it means is that when the prices are rising at that particular level, say 2 to 3%, when the country's productivity level increases by the same level of 2 to 3%, there is no impact on the real purchasing power of the people, because the productivity goes up by 3%, their real income also goes by 3%. So as a result, there is no impact on the people. But the 5% target which the central bank had set is too high for a country like Sri Lanka, because it enables the politicians to increase the money supply by say 7%, because the inflation rate is 7% and the real economic growth is 5%. They can increase money supply by 12% and finance the budget by borrowing from the banking sector, not for the central bank but for the commercial bank. So therefore this actually helps a government which is not in a position to finance itself by either raising money through taxation or by borrowing from the non-banking sector to print money and finance its budget. So that is why when the governor, if he wants to renegotiate it with the government of Sri Lanka for a proper inflation target, the government might want to keep the present target of 5, where the inflation rate can be 7% at the maximum or 3% at the lowest level. They might want to do that. But in my view, since the current inflation rate is going at around say 2%, the governor should negotiate for a lower inflation target so that the people will find that their productivity level goes up by 2 to 3% annually generally, and therefore their real wealth level will remain at the same level as before.
Now for some news in brief.
Sri Lanka and India abstained in the UN General Assembly on a draft resolution that called for an immediate, full and unconditional ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, which was adopted by the 193-member UN General Assembly, with 107 nations voting in favour, 12 against and 51 abstentions. The Ministry of Energy announced the appointment of a 7-member committee to review the existing coal supply mechanism to the Norachale Lakvijaya power plant.
The business news on Gold FM.
A new report from First Capital Research shows a 4.7 basis point decline in the willingness to lend during the first quarter of 2025. Despite a surge in retail borrowing, experts expect this demand to fade in early 2026 as financial institutions strategically pivot towards the corporate sector.
International news on Gold FM.
US President Donald Trump used his State of the Union address to address not just the nation, but also show the world that his America First protectionism is a hallmark of his second term. He started the address stating that he made the turnaround for the ages for the United States within just 12 months.
When I last spoke in this chamber 12 months ago, I had just inherited a nation in crisis with a stagnant economy, inflation at record levels, a wide open border, horrendous recruitment for military and police, rampant crime at home, and wars and chaos all over the world. But tonight, after just 1 year, I can say with dignity and pride that we have achieved a transformation like no one has ever seen before, and a turnaround for the ages. And we will never go back to where we were just a very short time ago. We're not going back. Today, our border is secure. Our spirit is restored. Inflation is plummeting. Incomes are rising fast. The roaring economy is roaring like never before, and our enemies are scared. Our military and police are stacked, and America is respected again, perhaps like never before. A short time ago, we were a dead country. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world.
Central to his message was the claim that his aggressive trade policy is the engine room of a new American economic era.
When I last spoke in this chamber 12 months ago, I had just inherited a nation in crisis with a one of the primary reasons for our country's stunning economic turnaround, the biggest in history, where the Dow Jones broke 50,000 4 years ahead of schedule, and the S&P hit 7,000, where it wasn't supposed to do it for many years, were tariffs. I used these tariffs, took in hundreds of billions of dollars to make great deals for our country, both economically and on a national security basis. Everything was working well. Countries that were ripping us off for decades are now paying us hundreds of billions of dollars. They were ripping us so badly, you all know that. Even the Democrats know it. They just don't want to say it. And yet these countries are now happy, and so are we. We made deals. The deals are all done, and they're happy.
He also signaled a desire to return the United States to a 19th century fiscal model, while also claiming that the mere threat of tariffs secured global peace.
Entertainment news on Gold FM.
The board of Warner Bros. Discovery says a revised $31 per share bid from Paramount Skydance could potentially become a superior proposal to its existing merger agreement with Netflix. Netflix was given 4 business days to respond if a better deal is identified.
Sports news on Gold FM.
Sri Lanka is set to face New Zealand in the 6th Super 8 match of the ICC T20 Cricket World Cup 2026. Play begins at 7 p.m. at the R. Premadasa Cricket Stadium. A special traffic plan will be in place, which can be accessed on www.heronews.ok/en. That's it for now. This is Dulia De Silva for Gold FM. Thank you, and have a lovely day ahead.